And welcome back to another episode of the Choose954 Podcast, episode 104, with our upcoming CreativeZen talk speaker, Hakim Lakhdar, here from our beautiful Zero Empty Spaces Gulfstream Park location in Hollandale Beach. If you didn't know about Choose954, myself, Evan Snow, my business partner, Mr. Andrew Martineau, started a social movement to cultivate culture and community here in my native Broward County in an effort to keep people to know with all the great things that are going on to make this a better place to live and not just a better place to vacation. The point of the podcast is to connect you with interesting people like him that are doing important things in the community, and he's done quite a bit. So without much further ado, can you share a little bit about your personal journey that's kind of led you to this stage in your career where you're at now?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, Evan. It's great to be here. I will keep it short because I could go in 1,000 different directions, which I'm looking forward to sharing with people more on December 13th. But it's been a wild ride. It's been really an amazing journey, both personal and professional, to be doing what I get to do now as a transformational leadership coach. And I spent a lot of time doing executive education, sort of leadership and management training for lawyers. I'm a non-lawyer, but I spent a lot of time in the legal profession, global legal profession, and traveling the world, interacting with people at some of the highest levels in the legal profession. And we were always sort of focused on this, being better leaders, being better managers of our firms or our legal departments. And what I saw was that through these trainings, there were lots of opportunities to better understand these concepts theoretically. Mm-hmm. And where the transformation actually would often occur was in some of these one-on-one exchanges that we would have during the coffee break, during the networking happy hour, during the private dinner. And it dawned on me that these are people that work and operate at a certain level where they don't have time or don't create the time to have these one-on-one, very open, very honest conversations about where they may be struggling in their leadership or what they want to be doing better. And, you know, from a place of non-judgment, we get to have those conversations. And I think that's why I do what I do.
That's amazing. And Hakim will be sharing, as I mentioned, at our next CreativeZen talk on December the 13th, at a very special location in downtown Fort Lauderdale for a change at the NSU Art Museum's auditorium. And we'll share more information in the link in the comments below. But maybe for those that are not familiar with this work, what inspired you to focus on transformational coaching, and what does transformation mean to you in this context?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So whenever I got the question of why leadership coaching or why transformational leadership coaching, early on I would always think, all right, what is some sexy, pithy, really sophisticated sounding answer that would draw people in? And honestly, what I landed on was this very simple, unsophisticated answer of, I don't like to see people unhappy at work. I don't want to see people spending a large majority of their lives in offices, in positions, in businesses, in industries, whatever it might be, unhappy with what they do for work. And if you identify these individuals who are unhappy in their careers, typically if you track that back, it tracks back to poor leadership. So I figured I'm going to go right to the source, and I'm going to work with these leaders who they themselves are probably struggling or maybe lack certain skills or experience as it pertains to leadership. And because of that discontent and that disconnect in how they lead, the people that they then lead feel that too. And then you have this whole workforce of unhappy people when actually if a leader loves their leadership, imagine how the people they lead then feel.
Correct. Wow. And it is a trickle-down effect, and then you can see companies and organizations crumbling from poor leadership.
Right.
Very well put. Were there any pivotal moments in your life that reshaped your path and outlook on success? Or, you've had a very interesting journey that's led you up to this point.
Yeah.
You've been a lot of places and seen a lot of things. Is there any one that, might stand out as that aha or pivotal moment?
There were two probably. One in my younger years, where when I was in middle school, there was an elective course that was made available to us as sixth graders, seventh graders, to become a peer counselor. And this peer counseling course, as it was made available, was a course where they taught you skills to coach your classmates, to counsel your classmates. They were going through separations or divorces, right, or split families, or abuse, or just sort of emotional situations that us at those younger ages were struggling with and maybe didn't have an outlet for.
Right.
And we as peer counselors became that outlet for them. And I just thought it was so fascinating. And I don't know what compelled me, and I'll talk more about this at the talk because I think it is a pivotal moment, where I just felt drawn to that. We did not only counseling, but we did conflict mediation, where, I'd go and have lunch with all my friends in the lunchroom. We'd go outside for recess after lunch, and there'd be a fight on the basketball court. And those two kids that were fighting on the basketball court, I'd be then an hour later sitting in a room doing conflict mediation, getting them to sign an agreement that they understand what happened and it's not going to happen again.
Wow.
And it was, why was I in that position?
Right.
Why was I doing that work? Who was I to be facilitating something like that at the same age of the kids who I was in conversation with? And I realized that there was just something in me that was really drawn to that kind of work. And one of my core values is compassion, and compassion is different from sympathy or empathy in that it's empathy with this added compulsion to help. And that's why I think that compassion really sort of is a fire in me at all times.
Wow. Bringing back memories to the peer counseling days. And I do remember, and I give you kudos for even being able to reflect back and identifying those moments, because those are the moments that oftentimes many people don't reflect, that do end up shaping the course of your life or your work. So for somebody that is in a leadership position or in some position in life that is yearning for more, is told they need more, has an aha moment where they realize they want more, how do you tailor your approach to help your clients and individuals just in general, and then really the meat and the potatoes of unlocking their higher level potential?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a very coachy response, which is it depends. But honestly, my coaching is very much grounded in the philosophy of self-leadership. That's where it all begins. You cannot lead others, a business, a team, a family, before you can lead yourself. If you can lead yourself effectively, you know who you are, you know what your values are, you know what you're a stand for, what you're a stand against, it becomes much easier to then communicate that to those around you, whether it's customers or clients or teams or family, friends. And I think that that's the basis for where I start my coaching with my clients is, do you know who you are? Do you know what you love? Do you know what your values are? I know my core values, so everything that I do is filtered through those core values. And if one of those three core values is not touched, or if all aren't touched upon in what it is I'm doing or who it is I'm working with, it's probably not the right fit for me. It's probably not aligned with me. And I think that a lot of people struggle with finding that alignment. And how can you find that alignment if you don't really know yourself to start with? So that's, I think, the basis for creating that transformation is, okay, now that I know myself as a foundation, now how do I want to lead? How do I want to give feedback? How do I want to delegate? How do I want to scale? All of those questions have to be answered first with, how do you as the individual envision yourself doing that?
Amazing. And oftentimes as people get to levels of leadership or success in their career, it happens. People forget how they arrived there and forget maybe the work that they put in or their core values. And Simon Sinek fans always think back to start with why.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're so in it and your head's down in it, you kind of need someone from the outside looking in to give you that different perspective. Sometimes it can come in the form of a friend or a colleague or your romantic partner or business partner. But then sometimes it comes in the form of a coach to really give you that additional perspective, especially when the coach isn't invested the same way that your business partner or your romantic partner might be.
Correct.
I have had great success, as I've shared with you previously and shared at CreativeZen, working with a coach on yoga, personal development, mindfulness, meditation, helped change my life and give me so much more clarity and balance and growth and better health. And, now I'm going to live longer as a result of working with the coach. So I have a lot of, I'm a firm believer in the possibilities and potential working with coaches.
Yeah. And it's also, if you don't mind,
please.
It's also, I think a lot of people think that coaches are only available here to sort of like fix broken toys. This isn't necessarily about people who don't like their lives or don't like their leadership or don't like their careers. It's oftentimes people who find that something has worked and they've just stuck with it. Okay, it's worked. It's allowed me to be successful. It's allowed me to climb the ladder or the ranks within an organization. But something about it feels incongruent.
Correct.
Something about it feels a little bit out of alignment, or they'd like to tweak it in a way where they can level it up a little bit or they can dial it up a little bit. So it doesn't mean that there's things that aren't always working. Sometimes it's a matter of things working too well, things working extremely well to where you don't want to abandon them. You get comfortable and you get complacent. And sometimes, like you said, it's someone who's invested in you, not as a spouse or a friend or a professional colleague. It's someone who says, I'm a champion for you. I'm invested in your success. And that's my only agenda here. No judgment. Let's just have a conversation about why it is that you've been doing what you've been doing in the same way for the last 20 years. And could you be doing something different?
Correct. And there's different coaches for different things. I worked with the yoga coach.
Yeah.
My girlfriend worked with not just a money mindset coach, but someone that had a background in accounting and finance that then found their calling to get in the energy healing space and Reiki and sound healing, and then integrates the financial background that she has into a whole holistic approach. She's actually going to speak after you, Jovi.
Very cool.
So there's different coaches and different things for different people.
Yeah.
But speaking of this upcoming talk on December the 13th, can you give us a little bit of a preview, and maybe what do you hope the audience will take away from you sharing your story and your presentation? Yeah.
Well, as I alluded to in my email, I'm going to do something that I don't normally do. And most of my talks are very much focused on obviously leadership, self-leadership, team dynamics, communication, trust building, all of those things that go into some facet of leadership. And given the nature of this group and these talks, I really wanted to kind of just show up as me. I wanted to share my story, and in my story, I think what people will find is there is the takeaway. Hopefully, I'm not sort of giving the spoiler here, but it's really about, as there were these various twists and turns and ups and downs, and nothing actually quite dramatic, but just the natural twists and turns, ups and downs of life. Mm-hmm. Where I was exactly where I was meant to be. And I think a lot of us really struggle with this feeling of, this grass is greener concept, or, I want more. And, a little dose of that is healthy. And too much of that has us judging ourselves all day long. I'm not doing enough. I haven't accomplished enough. I'm not fit enough, or not healthy enough. And again, a little dose of that channeled in the right way can be incredibly healthy. But I think that along my journey, every place that I was, while it's so different than where I am now, was exactly where I needed to be to get me to where I am now.
Correct.
And finding comfort and finding peace in that at every stage, even when I was, sitting on the floor crying alone in my room, was a moment where I realized it's okay. It's okay. I'm here. I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to do. And tomorrow is another day. Let's figure out what we do today, and tomorrow we'll figure out what we do tomorrow.
Amen. And everybody has their own unique story. Everybody has their own unique journey of how they arrived at this point in life. And that's why I love and continue to host this CreativeZen Talk series, bringing in local people from the community to share their thought-provoking, inspirational, relevant talk. Because it helps us realize we're a lot more alike than we are different.
Yeah.
Just because this person came from one part of the world or has this background in education, we all breathe the same air, and we all are, put our pants on one leg at a time for the most part. But when you do have some inspiration, some motivation, some positivity, it makes that path and journey that we're on a little bit clearer. And it's interesting, that you arrived at this point, right, as you mentioned, as was meant to be, as, divine timing. So you've now had success in your career, transition. Now you're helping others be successful and unlocking new levels of success. Any memorable success stories or, nuggets that kind of highlight the power of transformation from people that you've worked with?
Yeah. The client that I'm talking about will know who I'm talking about. And I'm happy to say references this transformational moment quite often, either with me or in other company. It was a moment where we were talking about communication as a leader, and he's a leader of an amazing company out of California. They do incredible work. They're a SaaS company. And in this conversation, we were talking about mindfulness and sort of intentional communication and intentional leadership around sort of in the context of communication. And at one point I said, tell me what you said in that interaction. And he shared with me what he had said. And I just responded with, does that sound like lazy communication to you? And from that day forward, in his mind, anytime he catches himself practicing lazy, what I called in that moment, and it wasn't like I was, coining that phrase, but it just sounded like lazy communication. He references that constantly. And that transformation, that's how transformations can occur. It can be as minor or insignificant seeming as that. But he says every time he's communicating with his co-founder or his team members or his family or whoever, if he catches himself slipping into that lazy, sort of less intentional communication style, he knows he's not bringing his best self to that interaction.
Correct.
And I just love that because it wasn't like this mind-blowing, face-melting moment where, oh my gosh, I'm a brand new man, and I'm turned into this butterfly and fly away. It was, And over time, and that's sort of the beauty of coaching, over time, the shift became a part of who he now is as a leader. And I've seen that change in him, and I think that transformations can happen that easily.
Correct. If you're, I don't want to say awake, but if you're in tune, if you're open, if you're present, right, then it doesn't have to be a bomb dropping to have that aha moment. So that was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Now that you are in the space and you work with high-level professionals and you've been around a lot of high-level organizations, how do you stay grounded and motivated while working with so many individuals on their personal journeys?
Well, fittingly enough, we just had the Thanksgiving holiday last week. I did a 5-day gratitude challenge for leaders. It's gratitude for me. I think I go to bed every night. I say, I'm thankful for my beautiful, healthy boys and my loving and supportive wife. I say it every night before I put my head on the pillow. Sometimes I say it multiple times because I'm feeling like it. But that's something I say every night before I go to bed. It's something I say every morning when I wake up. Gratitude is how I keep myself grounded. And even in the moments where something happens that is less than ideal, I say thank you. Because it's a moment to learn, it's a moment to grow, it's a moment to, sort of the taste the sour so I can enjoy the sweet kind of mindset. I think gratitude, and especially in the context of leadership, I think about it all the time. I talk to leaders about this constantly. It is a privilege. It is a privilege to have that level of impact on people's lives.
Correct.
To lead people. And you can make them happy, you can make them sick, you can make them motivated, you can do all these things. And of course, it's a co-creation. They have their part in it too. But the way that you can influence that through your leadership is a privilege. And when you can be grateful for that, and I'm certainly grateful every day that I get to do what I do, everything just seems okay.
Correct. But sometimes people do lose sight of that on the journey. And they can't see the forest through the trees, but gratitude, and for those that practice yoga or mindfulness, gratitude is kind of a byproduct. But when you do ingrain gratitude in your DNA, and there's like a compound effect. If you either write down, or you listen to affirmations, write affirmations, tell yourself you're grateful, it does start to pile up, and then it does literally start changing, who you are as a human being. And and then it compounds and then it expands to the people around you and your family or your organization or your community or your friends or whoever it is that you're interacting with and serving. And yeah, I give you a lot of credit because I think traditionally, maybe, I'm not saying this sort of like the Mad Men style of, business, but traditionally, I don't think gratitude probably was preached so much, especially at higher level leaderships, corporations, small businesses, startups, entrepreneurs, or otherwise. But we've seen, and there's obviously now, thankfully, research studies that prove of how impactful just a basic gratitude practice, telling yourself, I tell myself every single morning when I wake up, first thing, grateful I'm alive, grateful, I'm moving.
Yeah.
I have air to breathe. Yeah. So I give you a lot of kudos and credit on that. And
it's also, if you don't mind, it's also worth, and I did a post about this too, because I thought it was so important. And the post was, coaches have bad days too. And I don't want to imply that because I practice gratitude that I don't have tough days. Yeah. Or that I don't have hard moments. I have incredibly hard moments. I have 7-year-old twin boys at home that keep me on my toes. I'm in a relationship with a wonderful woman that, I could not do any of this without. And we have our tough moments too. Right. So the gratitude is not just gratitude for all of the things that feel so good and are going the right way. It's gratitude even in those tough moments when things aren't going the way that you wish that they would or that you feel that they could. So I think it's important and to meet that with compassion and to show yourself grace in those moments and to say, hey, this is part of the journey. Yeah, 100%. Everybody's a human being. Everybody goes through highs and lows. Therapist, coach. One of my coaches, unfortunately, was going through a divorce when we were in our coaching container. And I was able, and that person had such a profound impact on my life. I was grateful, and she ended up being grateful, that I was there to support her at that journey when she needed somebody, and we were able to support one another. And you're right, it's not always going to be peaches and rainbows. Right. Everybody, deals with highs and lows. Maybe they look a little bit different to different people. Sure. But with gratitude and mindfulness and, some of these tools and resources like affirmations, you can, when the storms come, they might not rock you off the boat so easily or so quickly. So I give you a lot of kudos and credit for integrating that, because I like people that preach gratitude and mindfulness. And something that most of the people I speak with on the podcast are creatives, artists. I'm an arts advocate, but so I generally ask, who are some of your inspirations, artistically, but I'll open it up, and it could be artistically, could be other coaches, speakers, but who or what are some people, things, books, methods that have inspired you? I do a lot of reading. I could rattle off some authors, and I have a lot of incredible books that I enjoy. I was just sharing with you before the podcast that I did my own podcast episode with my father. And my father's story is incredibly inspiring and someone who has genuinely realized the American dream, coming over from Morocco at a very young age and building a life and building a family. And I think about that. So when I start to question, can I do this? Am I doing it? I think about my father and him coming over here, not speaking the language and trying to find his way into building a life that he didn't know what it would look like, but he knew it was possible. And I think there's a lot of power in that kind of belief and that kind of faith in yourself to know that I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be, but I know it's going to be great in whatever form it takes. And then just to continue putting one foot in front of the other. So I think that's a big inspiration for me. And another great success story, another NSU connection. Yes. And normally, for those that have attended before or aware, we do host CreativeZen talks at the Alvin Sherman Library in the Cotilla Gallery on the campus of Nova Southeastern University in Davie, Florida, in Broward County. But this month there was a long-standing, already scheduled event, so we are going to host your installment of CreativeZen on Friday, December the 13th.
at the NSU Art Museum in downtown Fort Lauderdale, literally at the end of Las Olas, which is a really unique place and beautiful auditorium. The doors open at 8:30. The talk starts at 9. We're out of there by 10. And I would encourage you to, and something that's actually kind of interesting with your background and the work that you're doing, I always encourage people, as these talks were inspirational and actually served as an aha moment for me, I don't decide if I'm going to go or not go based off of the speaker's title or what they do, because we all have something to learn from different people. So I would actually maybe encourage those that are listening and haven't attended before, haven't attended in a while, to step outside your comfort zone, maybe join, because although maybe Hakim's not a painter or startup tech founder, still have a lot to learn from your journey, from your background, and from your experience. So you can find out more. You can find us on CreativeZen, on Choose954 website, Eventbrite, Facebook, and all that good stuff. And
I will say, for what it's worth, I'll share this in my talk. I was a featured act down in Key West. I play guitar and sang down in Key West. So, music is a passion of mine.
How about that?
I've written music. I recorded an album when I was in grad school in Indiana. So I consider myself a creative, and the fact that I get to do what I do as my creative outlet.
Yeah.
There's a lot of creativity that has to be folded into asking powerful questions and creating inroads and possibilities for people who may be limiting those possibilities for themselves. So I think a lot about the way that I used to do improv songs with an acoustic guitar in my lap. The audience would shout out something and I'd play a song about it. Those were moments, I think, that helped me really fine tune my ability to think on my feet and to interact with people. And, that was a very important part of my life. I love that.
And speaking is a creative outlet.
Sure.
Podcasting is a creative outlet. You don't have to be a painter to be creative.
Sure.
I don't paint, but I like to think I'm now creative. Interesting that you did mention that, because one of the last questions I wanted to wrap up with here is, what advice would you give to those that might feel stuck or they're looking for a breakthrough in their either personal or in their professional life?
Very simply put, I think I would encourage that individual to create space for themselves.
Yep.
I did a LinkedIn workshop just as an experiment, and in the description I put, no agenda, no presentation, just space. And I wanted to see how many people would show up, and I got an incredible turnout. And it was people who wanted to put something in their calendar that wouldn't have them doing something. Always, how many of us are always doing something all the time, feeling the need to do something in order to achieve certain results in our day, in our lives, in our businesses. And sometimes just space can be enough to do a self-audit, to reflect. And a lot of people that I've had conversations with who describe themselves as being stuck, just in an hour of us creating space, slowing down, answering some questions. We ask ourselves questions all day, every day.
Yeah.
As kids, we ask 300 to 400 questions a day. As adults, it's more like 24, 25. But still, 24, 25 questions, if they go unanswered, it's a lot of questions that go unanswered in the day. To slow down and actually hear yourself ask that question and then answer it can be very enlightening and can actually provide a lot of answers for what you want to do next, which will then get you unstuck.
Wow. And 60 to 80,000 thoughts we've had are 80% of the thoughts from the day before.
Sure.
And so it's good to take that time to answer, and with intention. And also, I've been preaching this to myself and my partner, and a reminder for myself and anyone is be a little bit more kinder to yourself, a little bit more gentler to yourself. Give yourself a little bit more grace. Not everything is always going to go according to plan or part of the script, and maybe you are going to be 5 minutes late or, whatever the situation may be. You're still alive, still have an opportunity to make it right. So I think that was great advice. If somebody would like to get in touch with you, follow you on social media, email, where can they find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate it. You can find me on LinkedIn easily, Hakim A. Lakhdar, Lakhdar. You can find me on lakhdarcoaching.com. You can email me directly, hakim@lakhdarcoaching.com, and I'm all on social media platforms, Facebook, X, Instagram, and fortunately, there's not a lot of Hakim Lakhdars out there. No. So if you look up Lakhdar Coaching or Hakim Lakhdar, you're going to find me.
You lucked out.
Yeah.
Last question we like to ask on the podcast here. Why do you choose the 954?
Well, it's funny. I get this question a lot because this area of South Florida is so transient.
Yeah.
And I grew up in 954.
How about that?
And I lived in the Middle East my younger years, but when I came back to the United States, we moved back to South Florida, and I grew up my whole life in Broward. And it used to be 305 before it was 954, as you recall. Yeah. And so 954 has always held a special place in my heart. And even when I was going to school in Tallahassee and people would say, "Where are you from?" I'd say South Florida. And I'd say, "Oh, Miami." I said, "No, not Miami. I'm from West Broward." Yeah. I'm, from Davie. And I left for a very long time throughout my career, and some of those twists and turns I was alluding to earlier. And when we had this option of relocating from the Northeast to be closer to family, we could either go further north to Maine, where my wife is from, or we come back down here to the 954. And we are living in the neighborhood I grew up in, and my kids are going to the same elementary school I went to, and it's home.
How about that? Wow. And even though I'm wearing this jacket today and it's a little bit colder than we would like it to be, still not that bad. That's right. For like 3 days out of the year.
That's right.
Very well put. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate, you make yourself available, and I'm excited to hear you share on December 13th and bring a little bit. We've had coaches before, but this is definitely a different perspective, and I'm hoping somebody either has their life transformed that day or as a result of the talk, or maybe work with you in the future. So certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Look forward to having you join us December the 13th. Doors open at 8:30. Talk starts at 9. We're out there by 10. We do this every second Friday morning of the month, except for in January, we are going to do it on the third Friday morning of the month because Andrew and I are making a trip to go open a space in St. Petersburg for Zero Empty Spaces, our artist studio space initiative. But January the 17th is going to be another NSU connection. And the leading artist in Broward County at the moment, Candy Lopez, who's a professor of art at NSU and is having one of the biggest moments of art of any Broward County artist we've ever known. She's killing it with galleries. She had one of the top 5 booths at the Armory Art Show, which is a huge accomplishment. She's at the LVMH panel this week during Art Basel. So she's going to be our speaker back at the Cotilla Gallery at Alvin Sherman Library on the campus of NSU, January the 17th. But every other talk is on the second Friday morning of the month. We encourage you to join us, regardless of who the speaker is, regardless of what their titles are. We all have a lot to learn from other people. We all, should make it a priority to give yourself the time to learn, to grow, to expand your mind, to create those new neural pathways and connections. And I've met some of my best friends through this event. I've heard some of the most amazing stories I've ever heard through this event. So that's why I continue to pay it back and pay it forward and continue to host these, because you never know who's going to be sitting in the audience yearning for some inspiration, if they know it or not, to change the course of their life, their community, or their world. So encourage you to join us. Feel free to reach out with any questions. Always looking for more people to share their stories. So if you know somebody has a story worth sharing, don't hesitate to reach out. And we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.